Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. So today what we're going to be doing is taking a look at my 2012 Toyota Camry SE, the V6 3.5 liter. I've been noticing a lot of, I guess you could say, fuel loss. So my miles per gallon, I used to average about 330 plus miles per fuel and when I tank up, and now it's only been around like 255, 260. So been looking around, again, taking a look at other forums, reading up on stuff like that. You know, typical tune-up that you could take in, obviously, to your local dealer. You know, when I took it in there to do a tune-up, it's like spark plugs, air filter, checking out some other connections, things of that nature. It's a little over, you know, $1,000. So I figure, you know, just take a look at it, see if I can maybe at least tackle the spark plugs myself today. Seems like that's the most common issue, along with maybe an air filter. Again, there could be a fuel filter, all that other good stuff along with it. But as a simple fix, or at least to try to get it going a little bit better, again, I do notice that, or at least what I thought was, when I was driving my car, it rumbled a little bit, like between idle and like maybe even shifts. I know it's not the transmission, but you know, in reading up that, and that little wobble that you feel could be maybe like a misfire in the spark plugs. So we'll take it step by step, but I think that that's the case of what I want to start with, and I'll move, or I'll try to at least get the again, spark plugs changed out today. We'll switch out the spark plugs. There's 6, of course, in this one. I went with some, you know, pretty better spark plugs itself, and I'll show you the link to which ones those are. And yeah, we'll tackle a video together. Spark plugs I'm going to be going with, I went with the NGK Ruthenium HX. There's the part number. There's, of course, 6 of them, so that's what we'll be entering into the vehicle. All right, so first things first, what I'm going to do is take off this cap and 2GR-FE motor, so what we're working with. Just pops into plate. So these 3 are pretty much going to be pretty easy to take off. Obviously they're right there front and center. The other 3, they're back there under this intake manifold on the other side. So that's kind of the issue with the V6s, because there's just more work to it than the inline 4 if you have the 2.5 liter. But yeah, we'll tackle that. We'll eventually take some of this off, and of course get back to there so that way we can get into it. All right, so start with this. Pull this off. Came off together. So next I'm gonna take off this boot that's going to the throttle body. Screw up here. And the reason why we're doing this is because I got to get to these 4 bolts to take off this whole cap, so we can remove this from that and be easier to pull it off. Pretty loose now, it's good. Probably end up just taking this off just to be a little bit more flexible on the pipe. And I'm also just going to take this one off too, just to get this whole boot out of the way. It's going to be a lot more room there to play with, and just make it easier to get access to. Alright, so just to make the job a little bit easier too, eventually I want to take off this plate and everything else associated so we can get back there once again. So there's a 13mm bolt right here and a 13mm bolt right here. The reason I didn't do this is I already took the one blade off, but I'm going to remove these wiper blades so that way I can pull off this cowl looking protecting piece. There are some clips under here that you want to pop through, so that way again you can put it back on nice and secure later. But again, what I'm doing is just taking a screwdriver underneath each one, wherever there is one, and simply popping it through just to make sure I can get that out. Again, there's a seal there, but pull to you. All right, so the next thing we're doing is taking off the windshield wiper motor. There's a couple bolts here that we're gonna be taking off, so just bear with me on that. So there's also a clip right here to the motor. I just want to push down on and pull it back. And we're just gonna be gentle with that. All right, the next to take off this metal bracket that held all the wiper motor and everything. There's 1, 2, 3 on top here, 3 on top over there, and about 1, 2, 3, 4. So total of looks like 10 bolts that we're gonna be taking off. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take off this throttle body piece. There's also a bracket here. And just setting that down like that, just so it's out of the way. So once again, this 12mm bolt right here, I'm taking off. All right, so now that I got that 12mm bolt off, I'm gonna go to the other side of the car here, where, again, it's gonna be hard to see, but this bracket right here, so I get a better angle. This right here is the bracket we're looking to take off. There's another bolt on the inside here. If I can reach it, I'd be grateful, but I'm gonna try either this one or this one, doesn't matter. For the purpose of the video, I believe it's gonna be easier to pull it off this one back here. That's just gonna be what's holding this whole thing together. But we wanna take off this clip too. So, just gonna pull down this tab right here. Now, if you have a ratchet that has at least a swivel on it, it's probably the better way to go about it. But I'm gonna use that top bracket bolt, not the bottom one, but the top bracket bolt, because it's just easier with the wrench to get in there. Make sure you have patience with this, because this is definitely a tedious bolt to get out. All right, next, since we got that bolt out, and boy, that was a tough bolt, there's 4 bolts on top here to take off the rest of this. There's 1 right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's what's next here. All right, so next we're gonna take out the last 4 of these guys. Already popped it earlier, so. All right, one thing I noticed too is there's another hose back here. It'd be useful to take off, so I'm just gonna go ahead and grab that. Try to slide that further down for us. Okay, that popped off there. Now we have full access to get back to the plugs. Time here, I'm going to start with the front here because it's going to be similar to the back, but you want to push down on this clip and then lift up gently over here. If the clips break, I mean, the good news is they are replaceable. Just got to go to the dealer to pick it up, but I'm going to try to do it without breaking it like I just did there. So I'm just helping myself lift this up. It's been some time probably since they've ever been changed or even changed in the first place. So that's why it's so sturdy and stiff as it is. So that's one. Got another one right here. Again, just trying to go gently, lift this tab up and pulling back slowly. As you can see, it's loose. There we go. It's 2. And number 3. There we go. So far, so good. We're going to unscrew these 3. So one at a time. Go. and then plugs in there that we're going to be replacing out here. So I'm going to do it one by one though, just so I don't lose place, and put the originals back in so I don't confuse myself, but we'll unscrew that one right there. All right, so once we take the spark plug out, more than likely it's going to be baked on. So again, never changed the spark plugs yet on this car. It's got 120,000 miles, so it's probably going to be pretty tight as it is. So just go gently, because we don't want to screw up any of the threading or anything like that. So I'm just going to use, you know, my typical hand feeling for it. But yeah, as you can see, it's pretty tough. And yeah, this very well could be the one. All right, so one thing you'll notice, and you might not be see quite in there, but there were some rust shavings when I was pulling the plug out. So all I did was take a wet chop vac and basically vacuum the inside as best as I could, and just a little bit around it, obviously. Again, this thing, you know, it's a clean plug, well, used plug, but this little brown stuff around it, yeah, believe it or not, that's that rust stuff. That the best you can do to clean out, do your absolute best, just so that way when you put it back in, you don't have to deal with anything falling in there again. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put a new plug in. Again, the ones that I went with. Just going to go in slowly to feather it in first with my hands. And the, I guess manufacturer spec says it's supposed to be about 13 pound-feet of torque. So I'll eventually get my torque wrench in here and get it to that 13. Starting to get a little tighter. It's pretty tight now, but I'm going to go ahead and get that torque. All right, so now I'm going to be torquing it down to 13 pounds just to make sure it's as good as I can make it. For the purpose of the video, we put the one in there, we torqued it down to 13. I'm going to go ahead and put this back in. Just like that. Get the bolt. Okay, one's pretty much done. We'll just plug it back in, and then I'll just work on the next two. That's it. All right, so don't mean to jump around too much on the video, but now I'm going to be working around back with these two right here. So again, already unplugged these from last time, just pulling this out. Just doing one by one. So I'm going to unscrew that one in there, get my swivel socket. So once again, just unscrew it out. There you go. Get yourself a new one. And same thing as last time. Just screw it in finger first. Then we'll take our torque. All right, that's another one. This guy ready? New one in. Put the clips on. All right, and that completes actually the front of it. Now we're gonna be working toward the back. So the next thing we have to do is take off that clip, and that back clip for the other 3 spark plugs. Now, in the spirit of the video, yes, same thing if you can finagle getting a flathead screwdriver on that little lip to get it off, but you know, once you do that, just makes the job a little bit easier. It's hard to get on camera, but that way those 3 plugs come off just like how you had the same setup in the front. All right, so I'm gonna start with the one back there. Well, if I reckon this is probably the one. Look how oily that is. So it might have been that was given out. I'm gonna go ahead and put in my new one. Next one. So I got a new plug, just fitting it in. All right, so in order to get to this last plug, I'm just gonna unscrew this bracket bolt right here because it's giving me a little bit of trouble to All right, so this little bolt I'm gonna take off really quick because it's kind of in my way for this last bolt. Spark plug, should I say. So hopefully that'll loosen it up enough for me to get in there. Don't want to lose the bolt. In order to get to this last plug, I just unscrewed or unplugged this wire harness. It's really tight to get to, but hit the clip up there. Then you can move this harness full forward and pull this out for the back because that was kind of blocking me from doing it. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and plug these back in now. Make sure it clips. 1, 2, bottom. Again, just putting things back on like normal. Okay, just double check connections, which they are good. Everything else is there. We slowly start putting stuff back together. All right, so now we're gonna take the intake manifold, put it back on where it belongs. So again, I was reusing the gaskets. Again, it's probably recommended you change those out. But again, this is just a quick tip to show you guys how to do this. Again, by all means, not a mechanic here, but again, they look in pretty decent shape. I'm just gonna put it right back on. So obviously once you get this back on, like I said, just make sure it fits back on those 2 dowel, looks like rods popping out. Again, it needs to fit with that. It's gonna feel a little funky if it doesn't sit right, but eventually it's guided in place the right way. And then just bolt it back down from the outside first and then going back in. So just gonna take this nut, try not to lose it, put it on. Again, this is plastic, so be careful. Don't over tighten. Again, use your hands, feel it. It's pretty much tight, but just a little. All right. And then we're gonna go with the 4 on the inside. So 4 more of those. Putting those back in. Just fitting it first. And just make sure it doesn't fall off. And the last one. And then just tighten it down. Now we're going to put the brackets back on in the back, just to make sure it's all 100% sturdy and secure. So I had to use an actual wrench to go back in here to tighten down that bracket because it's almost impossible with the socket. Again, now we're just doing also the other back one on here, and we should be all set. It'll help if you have a ratchet type orientated one, but other than that though, this will do. And there we go, nice and tight. Next, you want to make sure this goes back into its spot. Nice click, good. Make sure nothing else got loose, looks good. Tighten the last bracket on the other side. So, what I couldn't record on the video, so it's hard to do, but that bolt that holds the bracket in, I had to move around this hose a little bit. It's a 10mm bolt right here that I unscrewed just to give me some playroom, so I could fit that bolt back in because it just wasn't lining up properly. But with a little bit of elbow grease, move it around a little bit, eventually get the bolt back in, tighten it back down so it's secure, and obviously just go back and retighten this little bracket for you so it doesn't move around on you. And we'll go to the next step. Then don't forget about this little bracket here that has to go on top. Kind of helps hold everything in place. So just making sure I got that on there too for us. There we go. And then the last bolts. Can't see, but it is right there somewhere. There it is. Again, everything finger tight. Now I'm going to get my socket set and get much closer to it. So bear with me. So one thing I forgot to mention though, yes, I'm screwing this back on, but that throttle body gasket, again, recommended you replace it. Again, mine look pretty clean. I'm just doing this for myself, but you probably would want to replace that, especially if it's been on for a long time. Okay, pretty solid. All right, now that I got that connected, again, I'm just gonna go ahead and get the rest of the hoses that we had originally. There we go. Back this. That's going to sit back there. That's sitting on that. Nice alignments. And then we'll put the bolts all back. Little rubber boot here that slides into. Yep, just align your holes. Put this back over here. Okay, clips right in. It's going to be a little tricky. So biggest thing is that underneath this visor, again, it clips underneath. So you want to get it nice and snug. And then when you come onto the sides over here, again, these lips need to go underneath the paneling and over the mirror. And that's how you defer that water again, so that way it's not all dripping into the motor again. Now when you go back over here on this inside, just make sure, because also when these things sit down, right here there's like little clips you want to push in, just to make sure, again, it doesn't slide around anymore. So I'm just going to go around one more time and just make sure. There we go, see how it sits in there nicely. Move all the way around the vehicle. These ends ones are usually the toughest. There we go. Once you get those guys in, you're going to be all right, nice and smooth. put our windshield wipers back on. Again, you kind of want them sitting where you had them, right? So that's about right. Push down. Screw your bolt back on that came with it. Again, finger tight for now, just to make sure it's on. We're gonna come over here with the next one. Align it the way you want it. Looks good right there. And then you just push down again to make sure it's in. Okay. So then we're just gonna put the last piece on, which is the boot, and then connect it obviously to the hose. So I'm just gonna wiggle it in there best that I can. Okay, that side's on. This side gets pretty tight in here, so just do your best. I have to loosen that up a little bit. All right, once you get a little bit of elbow grease on here, you obviously line up the hose, put this one back on. And then I'm just going to tighten up the hose clamps right about here. Go too tight, but definitely tight. Same here. Make sure that's super tight. Last piece of it. Cover over it. Line it properly. It should fit right in those little holes. And that's it.